welcome to the Technical Staff and Theatre Workers podcast. It's the podcast in which I talk to people who work backstage in the technical theatre industry about how they got in, their experiences, and any advice they can give to anyone getting in. This is episode 7 of season 2. A big thank you to everyone who's downloaded the show, everyone who's listening to the show. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell everyone you know who's interested in theatre and those who aren't interested in theatre, because it might make them interested in theatre. Yes, thank you so much for all the downloads. It's been really good so far, so really enjoying it. And without further ado, let's get on to our next guest. I'm here with my guest at this time. If you'd like to introduce yourself, and what is your current job title in the industry?
So, hello, I'm Cerys Rhys-Jones. My job title is ASM book cover on the Book of Mormon.
Excellent. And how did you get into theatre, Cerys?
Well, I started off as a performer or an actress. I say performer rather than actress because I worked in children's theatre, so I just jumped about on stage with Barney the dinosaur and Postman Pat and stuff.
Excellent.
So I did that for 10 years. So I had gone to drama school, but not to do stage management, but to do acting. So I did that for about 10 years and then hit an age where I was like, oh, do you know, I really can't be bothered to jump about on stage anymore. I think I'd rather do some backstage stuff. But when you're an actor, as I'm sure most people are aware, you do a lot of in-between jobs, and mine was a front-of-house job at Wyndham's Theatre. I was there on and off in between acting jobs for years. So I did some work experience backstage on one of their shows. At the time, what show was it? It was King Charles III.
Right.
Then I had a friend who worked on stage door on Stomp, and they got me in for work experience. So I'd had 2 then bits of work experience that then said, actually, we'd like to take you on as a dep. So that's kind of how my career started, and I was really lucky because I hadn't gone to train as a stage manager. It was just literally I was in the right place at the right time, knew the right people, and if you get in as a dep and they like you, somebody then left Stomp, so I took their full-time job, was there for 3 years, and then I depped on Les Mis where I met you.
Excellent.
That was quite a long story, but that's...
Well, that's all right. It's kind of covered a lot of the questions as well.
Oh, there you go then.
So you did train, but only in performance, not in...
Yes, exactly.
Right, okay. So what was your first job in theatre, which I think you've just told us?
Well, my first job in theatre would have been front of house Wyndham's Theatre.
What was your first job backstage in theatre?
Backstage in theatre was, King Charles III and Stomp. I can't remember which one I depped for first. I think it was King Charles and then Stomp. So I was depping on them for a year or so and then went full-time. Excellent.
Give us a list of any other jobs you've had.
So I depped for a long time. I was on Les Mis, and then I was lucky enough to get into Harry Potter because I'm a big fan, so that was exciting. Matilda, and then Book of Mormon. And actually, I'd turned down depping at Book of Mormon because I'd said yes to a panto, which I really didn't want to do, but I really feel strongly that you should stand by your sort of commitments and what you said yes to do.
Yeah.
So I went off and did, panto, which was 3 shows a day and not much money, when I could have been at the Book of Mormon. But instead, I took the job, which then meant I actually met my fiance or husband to be in 6 weeks' time. So actually, it all worked out for the best. But I also put my friend Erica in touch with Book of Mormon. She ended up getting the job, and then I ended up taking over her job. And so it was all very serendipitous that we've intertwined our careers, and now we job share. Nice.
And you do job share, which is an interesting thing because it's new within this industry, relatively new, I would say, within this industry. So how are you finding the job share, and how does it work?
So I feel really, really lucky because... when I was here full-time, I then got pregnant, and I thought, well, it would be amazing to stay in the industry, but there's no way I'm going to want to do 8 shows a week. There's just no way. So I talked to the producers and said, how do you think a job share might work? And they were all really up for making it work. And then my best friend, who had also worked here, Erica, got pregnant, and we had babies 12 days apart, and so she applied for the job and got it. So now I job share with my best friend. We do 4 shows a week, so we do 3 days, so 2 evenings and then 1 double day, and it just works really well. I wouldn't really change anything because I get to still stay in the industry, but I get to see my baby 4 days a week,
which is really good because the industry's not geared towards families, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially young families, and actually it gets even worse when they get to school age because
then you
barely see them.
Yeah.
As a woman in the industry, have you ever come across any issues with regards to people holding you back from jobs or anything like that because you're a woman?
No. I don't
Excellent.
think so.
Good answer. What would you say are the pros and cons of working within the theatre industry?
Well, the pros and cons are the same, the hours, because the cons are, if you work full time, obviously I don't, but if you do, then 6 evenings a week you're at work, which sucks. But then you never have to get up in the morning, which is great for me. Obviously now I do because I have a baby. So I'm talking about the pros and cons before I had the baby. Now it's slightly different. Now the cons are I get home very late and my baby doesn't sleep well, so I don't get much sleep. So I suppose the hours. But yeah, if you love the theatre, it's just a great place to be, isn't it? You just come to work and have fun, especially if you work with nice people.
Absolutely. It's quite an interesting thing that you just said, that the pros and cons change depending on your personal situation.
Yeah.
So even if you're, for instance, if you're single or if you're of a certain age, if you're quite young, the pros and cons of the industry might be different too, because, you know, when you're young and you're single, going out at night and not having to get up is kind of a cool thing to do, and it's a good thing. But the older you get, the more, I don't want to say ties because that's the wrong word, but responsibilities that you get, the harsher that can become. Yeah.
Having said that, though, when you're single and trying to date, and you go online and meet people that all do 9 to 5, and you say, well, I work 6 evenings a week, so it can be tough.
Yes, I suppose that can also be tough, yes, which is why a lot of people in the industry end up with people in the industry.
Yeah, exactly.
It's interesting. What would you say is a common misconception to anybody who is trying to get into the industry? So what they think the industry is like compared to what it actually is like?
That's a really tough one. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure this would be any news to anybody, but I just sort of feel like, because of my experience, it's just very much who you know, and I don't know, rather than your sort of skill set, just having the right attitude at work and just being really easy to get along with, that sort of has done me some favours, even though I haven't trained. Yeah. So I'm not sure that would be news to anybody, but that's my experience of it, I think.
Right, okay. And what advice would you give to anybody who's trying to get into the industry?
I think just get out there and meet people in the industry as much as you can. I'm not one for like networking, but just what I did when I wanted to DEP is I dropped my CV into every single theatre and said I'd really like to come and just do some work experience. I'd like to shadow, because I really wanted to call a show. That's always been an ambition of mine, which I now have done. But it was a good way to get in, because I could say I want to go and shadow somebody on the book. And so I sat with maybe 10 DSMs across the West End. And if you make a good impression and you're friendly and nice and seem like you're hardworking and all of the rest of it, then chances are, I think I got maybe 2 phone calls within a week or so of work experience saying, oh, actually, do you want to come and DEP for us? So it's just about meeting people, because if you just drop your CV and say, I'm looking for a job, you're just a name on a sheet of paper. Yeah. So you actually need to meet them, because then they go, oh, yeah, you're quite nice. Because
first impressions, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah. And I suppose another interesting thing is that a lot of the teams are very small. You know, your team, automation, is very small.
I'm not on automation.
Oh, my God, I'm so sorry, Bram. Your sound team is very small. The automation team is very small. And our stage management team is really small. And so it's all about working with people that you think you can get on with. So that's why if you meet somebody in person, you think, oh, yeah, I think I could get on with you. That's way better than just looking at a CV. Yes,
it also helps on the flip side of that. If you meet the people who are currently working in the building, then you can get a better understanding as to how they are, what they're like together, and how the show runs and how they run the show, because obviously everybody runs shows in a different way.
Exactly.
So it kind of also works both ways if you get to meet people rather than, like you say, just being the name on a piece of paper.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent, thank you. And that is everything I've got, so thank you very much for joining me.
It's okay, hope I didn't waffle on too much.
Not at all. Lovely, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you to Cerys for that one. Enjoyed that one. It's interesting to hear how so many of us wanted to be performers before we decided to go backstage, and how many of us were actually performers before we went into the backstage. So really good fun, that one, and looking forward to next week too. Thank you so much for listening to this. Thank you so much for downloading it. It's been really great, really loving it so far, and long may it continue. Thank you to all the guests that have been on, and I shall see you all next week.